Good evening and welcome to Fishing with Kirk. So you join me on Thursday evening ahead of a session we've got planned tomorrow to Yeadon tarn. We're tying up a few rigs. So we're going to tie up a few rigs and we're going to test them in our beloved Goldfish's tank, RIP Goldie. We're going to drop some rigs in there and have a look, see how they behave, see how they perform, see if we can learn anything. Tying them up using these hooks that have come through the post today. So look amazing. IB hooks, Euro range, wide gape. A good friend of mine, Mike Globe, who's a cracking carp angler, uses these quite a lot. He's had a really good weekend last weekend at SNR pools on their bear pool. Managed to catch 2 fish over £20. So check Mike out on social media. But genuinely, if they're good enough for Mike, they're good enough for me. Okie dokie, so bombs away with the first rig. So what we've got here is we've got a Slip D Combi rig, which is some £20 boom, stiff link to a supple section of supple braid, and then we've got a Corda slow sinking essential cell boilie on there. So we're going to drop this in as if we've cast that out into the water and just take a look at that, that presentation. So that's gone in nicely. You can see there that the hook bait is just sitting beautifully above the hook, and the hook link is sitting flat against the bottom. So in terms of that as a presentation, I think that's pretty impressive, although we are on a very clean gravel bottom there on the bottom of the tank. So really interesting. Let's have a closer look. Okay, so bombs away with the Ronnie. Quite a long length of hook length material here, so let's see how this falls and sits. So interesting how the lead's fallen there, perfectly upright in the gravel, and then you can see there that the rig itself is sitting pretty well. Probably not as well as you'd want for a Ronnie, so that I don't think that bait's actually buoyant enough to hold up that Ronnie presentation there. It is more of a wafter, so doesn't look brilliant from my perspective, and you can see that the boom's actually sitting just off the gravel. So again, not the best presentation there. So I'm just going to drop it again. And let the rig fall naturally. So yeah, again, for me the presentation doesn't look as good as the Combi. I think there's a little bit more movement between the putty and the hook with the Combi rig, and it just seems to lift up a little more naturally. I think you've got less weight around the base of the hook, so for me that Combi rig does look better to hold up one of these Corda boilies. So for me, so far, advantage to the Combi rig. Okay, so we've just tied up a pretty simple German rig, coated braid, a couple of blobs of putty on there, and we've just stripped back some of the coating next to the hook. So I'm hoping this is going to lie a little bit better on the bottom and give us a bit more of a wafter presentation. So let's put it in the tank and let's see what happens. Okay. Okay, interesting. So that hook is a little bit lighter without having the metalwork around it. So you can actually see there that the bait is pretty well presented. It is wafting just above the bottom. Probably look to trim a little bit off that bait just to give a perfect presentation. But yeah, I think that's looking pretty good, that the coated leader's sticking nicely to the bottom. Okay, so you can see here I've trimmed a reasonable amount off that pop-up boilie and actually created pretty close to what I think is a perfectly neutrally buoyant bait. So everything looks good to me there. You've got the coated leader sitting really snug to the bottom with the 2 pieces of putty on there, and I think of the 3, that's probably the best presentation that I've created tonight. Okay, so interesting session there. So we've tested 3 rigs. Out of the 3, They all looked pretty good, in fairness, in the tank, in sort of perfect conditions. One thing I've learned is that I think the Ronny does need those sort of perfect bottom conditions, and you know, you're fishing over gravel or sand, something like that, probably the best option. Next option would be that Combi rig. I think you've got enough flexibility and not a lot of weight in the hook end that allows that wafter and bottom bait presentation to work nicely. I think on balance of the three, the best one has been this one, which is the coated braid rig. So I think this has just got the weight in the line that just allows things to sit and pin nicely to the bottom. And when you can't guarantee that you're fishing over a nice clean bottom, this is probably the way to go. So I think I'm going to pin my hopes on at least 2 of these rigs at the tarn at the weekend, because there is a bit of rubbish on the bottom in there, so leaves and bits and bats, and I think this presentation gives us the best chance of it fishing properly and giving us the best chance of a bite. So I'm going to pin my hopes on these. I'm just going to drop this in with a little PVA net on there, just so we can see exactly how the rig will behave once we drop those into the lake on Friday. Okay, so we're just going to drop in the coated braid rig with the wafter on it, complete with the PVA bag, just to see the full effect of how this will fish, hopefully, when we get to the tarn on Friday. So here we go. It's taking a little while to melt actually. I thought that PVA might be a little bit quicker than that, so PVA melts, pops out and leaves that wafter just sat perfectly over a nice little bed of bait. So that looks pretty amazing to me, and I'm sure that'll be fairly attractive to hopefully a passing £25 carp. And as for the rest of the rig, again, just sitting lovely, sat really tightly on the bottom, out of the way, and the wafter's just sitting up perfectly. So that is going to be how we're going to fish on Friday, folks. So I'll see you then.